Okay.
It's just that I know that a lot of people, there are a lot more people also who wanted to join us tonight who will want to watch the presentation and so on. And if we've got the recording, it does it, doesn't it? Somewhere in the cloud, and we'll be able to send that out as a link.
Yep, we're recording.
Brilliant. We're not only launching the Green Quarter Vision tonight, but it's also the first day of Nottingham Co-Housing's website. Is that right, Kitty?
That's right. It's all ready to go. And we'll be sending the link out after this event to everybody anyway.
Yeah. So people will be able to have a look at that, and we will be uploading the presentation or a version of it onto the website, so that people can come back and actually have a look at stuff as well. Okay, I'm conscious it's 7:05. We've got a lot to get through, so I think I'm going to get started. Okay, Emma.
Brilliant.
Okay, so I think, am I going to be spotlighted now, Emma?
Yep, I will just spotlight you.
Not that I want to see my face very large or all the rest of it. Thank you. So, welcome everybody to the launch of the Green Quarter Vision for the Broadmarsh. And it's so amazing to see so many people here and to know what interest there is in doing something really positive with that space. We hope that we're going to inspire you and that you'll be able to see this as a beacon of hope during a kind of difficult and uncertain time. My name is Jean Booth and I'm a co-director of Nottingham Co-Housing, and you'll be meeting other people from Nottingham Co-Housing tonight. Nottingham Co-Housing champions the development of sustainable, community-led homes, and we've joined with Nottingham Good Food Partnership and with others to bring you this vision that you're going to see tonight of a modern, community-led, sustainable and commercial green urban village. So what is co-housing? Just imagine your home, having a home, your own private space. And you might work from home, as many more of us are doing, and we're doing even before COVID. And your home will be designed with that in mind. So there will be space for you to be able to work from home. Or you might have a shop or a workshop space close by or below you, below your home. Or you might share a co-working space or workshop space with others, or work for a large green company close by. So close that you can walk to work and shop locally. And you can buy food grown by your neighbours in the green spaces, caves and vertical farms around you. Or eat out at the cafes and the bars where the food grown around you is cooked. Now it sounds idyllic, doesn't it? Who wouldn't want to live there and work there? And actually, we've already got people and businesses wanting to move into the Green Quarter. And that's the thing about co-housing, because instead of developers building properties, houses and commercial spaces speculatively, and then adding up to a third on the price with marketing costs, trying to flog them, selling them, most co-housing is actually sold in advance. And the people who are going to live, work and play there will co-create the Green Quarter with the authorities, with the developers, with the investors and architects. And because you're saving that third, usually spent on selling property, that helps to make those homes affordable. And you've got money, you've got revenue streams, cash flow sorted out up front to help secure commercial mortgages at low rates from ethical banks and social investment funds. Furthermore, you can design in shared facilities that make living there even more desirable, like shared childcare and elder care. Because make no mistake, we're not talking about trendy pads for singletons here. We're talking about lifetime family homes. We're talking a diverse, intergenerational and interdependent, hard-working, green urban village. Tonight, you're going to hear about this vision from some of those involved in writing and drawing it. It is by no means fully formed. It's by no means fully formed. And Penny, I'm going to introduce the team in a moment. Penny's going to explain in a moment how the vision came together. Steve and Katerina will take you through preliminary drawings, and Kitty will talk a little bit more about the co-housing, the homes, the workspaces, and funding the Green Quarter. But we're at the beginning. These are ideas, they're concepts, first principles. We've invited everybody here tonight so we can tell you about them and to show you what Nottingham could have, and to ask you whether you'd like to join us in co-creating Nottingham's new Green Quarter to replace the Broadmarsh. So without further ado, I'm going to take you through just a couple of points on housekeeping, and then we're going to go on. So I'm going to introduce you to the team. Points on housekeeping. Oh, sorry, we're going to keep you on mute. There's a lot of you here tonight, which is fantastic. Please use the chat room facility in order to put questions or any comments that you have as the presentation goes along. These are going to be gathered up by two of our team, by Liz and Prakash, and when we come to question time at 8 o'clock, they will be posing the questions that you have asked. Any that we're not able to get through, don't worry, we're going to be sending out a form tomorrow morning for you to add questions and comments and so on, and we will get back to you on those as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the team. Steve, can I have the first slide, please? Right, here we go. You're going to see these people speaking tonight. You probably might have already seen them. So we've got Liz and Prakash from Nottingham Co-Housing, who are going to be collecting your questions from the chat room and comments and so forth. We've got Kitty, who's going to be speaking a little bit later in the presentation. We've got our architectural team, Stephen and Katerina, who will be taking you through the conceptual drawings and so on. But now I'm going to hand over to Penny. And Penny, of course, many of you will already know her, yes. And she was, of course, named as one of the top 100 women who were changing the world by the Independent newspaper. So, and she knows more about environmental and green issues than I have ever, she'll have forgotten more than I have ever known. So please, Penny, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I mean, first of all, I just want to say how overwhelmed we were that, you know, over 360 people wanted to join us for this meeting. And it's really quite something. We really hope that many of you will keep on with this journey with us. So I'd just like to give you a little heads up as to how we got here. So in fact, it was only about 3 weeks before the close of the deadline for proposals to go into the big conversation. And I was just kind of looking at it and thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if this could be a wonderful green space where you could live and work and play in a truly green environment? And I just sort of kind of had in my head this list. And I'd been looking on the Nottingham Co-Housing Facebook page and just found myself chucking essentially a wish list at the site. And that must have struck quite a chord with the guys on the co-housing team, because there was a response that said, well, this is interesting. Could we do something with it? And then Stephen and Katerina also happened to see the post, and they jumped right in and said, well, we'd like to be the designers. We'd like to get involved in this. So with less than 3 weeks to go before the deadline, we all of a sudden had a project proposal team. And I just want to reiterate that this is a vision. It's not intended as a proposed document, and it will evolve. And we really wanted it to be something that would inspire, as Jean said. So it literally went from a few words on a page to all of a sudden people working very, very long hours around the clock, particularly Stephen and Katerina. And as we go through the proposal, I'm sure that you will agree that this is a marvellous piece of work that they've done. So if we could just go on to the next slide. I'm going to have to put your glasses on, I can't see. So one of the things that really inspired this design is something called the Wellbeing Design Guide, which is part of a suite of good quality design guides that the council put together. And I'd like you just for a second to have a look at the quote that's on the right-hand part of that page, where it says, "It's clear that we need to preserve the natural landscape and that we embed well-being at the heart of our designs to restore natural habitats, to create natural capital and to optimise food production." And that was written by the head of the planning committee. And that was a really advanced thing to do. And what's really quite special about the Wellbeing Design Guide is that it was one of the first pieces of local planning legislation that was co-designed with the community. And that came about as a result of Nottingham Good Food Partnership doing quite a lengthy consultation with local people and finding out what well-being meant to them, you know, especially in terms of new developments happening. And as a food organisation, we were very concerned that we were seeing the landscape being, you know, covered in housing, covered in big buildings, but with very little space for nature, spaces to grow food and for people to come together. So we really wanted to get involved with that and to see if we could change that. And as a result of the consultation, the City Council invited us to help co-design the Wellbeing Design Guide. And what that does is to put nature first and foremost at the heart of design. So if developers come along and they want to build over 20 houses, the first thing they've got to do before they can put pen to paper is to really study the Wellbeing Design Guide and apply those 6 key principles. And you can find that guide on the council's website. So we go on to the next slide, please. So the Broadmarsh. Imagine you're a bird and you're flying over this grey concrete canyon, and literally we can see hardly any greenness there. We can see a few trees dotted around. If you imagine to the left up where the castle is, and behind that is the park estate with this magnificent 150-acre forest, essentially an urban forest. But right in the heart of the city, even though we're surrounded by beautiful parks, in the centre it's a cold concrete canyon, and it doesn't have to be this way anymore. So let's just go on the next slide and just see how it looks. So it looks pretty dystopian, doesn't it? It's not gorgeous. And as we go through the presentation, we'd like to take you on a journey, an imaginary journey, where all this aspect that we have here of a dislocation between humanity and nature and how we can change that. On to the next slide, please. So when we were putting together the proposals, it was really important to us that to recognise that this is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something that's really, really deep green for the city. So we looked at a number of principles, and we'll be going to this deeper later on in the presentation. So I'm just going to touch on it for now. So when we come to sustainable design, we have got some amazing green buildings in Nottingham, but we haven't got enough. So it's really important to us that the design of the site goes beyond light green and goes into depth. We have an ambition, it's quite a big one, that we'd like to export more energy than we use, that buildings are built to the highest environmental standard using natural materials wherever possible, and also to retain as much of what is there already. So for example, with the Broadmarsh, it would be a huge carbon burden if we were to take all of that away. So we want to try and reincorporate that. Waste, massive issue for us. We're all aware of how deadly plastic is, and you know, how we need to really manage all of our waste streams. So a big part of that is really thinking about on site, how we can integrate all of the uses. So the food that you eat needs to be composted on site. We need to make sure that we have a ban on single-use plastics. So that will mean that everybody who uses that site really has to buy into that principle. Water is our most precious resource. I know it's been chucking it down all day, but drinkable water, potable water, is a finite resource, and it's absolutely essential that every aspect of the site treats water with respect. And of course, water draws us to it, and it's an immensely important thing for nature. Wherever you have water, nature will turn up. Another aspect is looking at the connectivity of our city. It's about creating a space where it's easy to get around, that if you're a wheelchair user, you need to be able to access it just as well as anybody who's ambient. And we also need, and of course, you know, here we are on Zoom, we need to be digitally connected. So that's really, really critical. We need to be an economically robust place. We know that, you know, jobs are under threat, and we're really, really consciously aware that when the council has been commenting on proposals, that one of the things has really come through is that it's got to be economically robust. It's a really important piece of prime estate. Let's talk a little bit about lifelong learning. I don't know if you know this, but Nottingham's got the youngest population in the country. And the pandemic has also seen a massive drop in the number of jobs for young people. 25% of jobs for young people have gone. And we've got to create a landscape and a learning framework that's going to be fit for purpose for the future. We have a lack of skilled young people who are able to take on new construction techniques, new materials. So we've got to ensure that we've got training spaces for that. If we're going to be growing more food in the city, and we'll all be aware of the issues of food poverty in Nottingham, around 30% of all families are facing food insecurity, and they can't afford to access good quality food. So we absolutely have to change that. But we need young people to do that. I'm a grower, and lots of other people around the city are, and we know that the majority of people growing food are over 40. So we absolutely have to readdress that balance. And let's talk about leveraging our local assets. We have got the most amazing heritage in our city. And on this site, it's completely cloaked by concrete. And we've got some very exciting ideas about how we can bring that back, and Stephen will be talking about that shortly. We also have tremendous sectors. We've got biosciences, we've got our enormously vibrant communities. One of the greatest assets of our city are our diverse and harmonious communities. So we want the Green Quarter to be a space where everybody is celebrated, where our strengths really, really come to the fore. And underpinning all of this is well-being. And during the course of the pandemic, I think it's thrown into remarkably sharp focus that the well-being of each of us also underpins the well-being of the economy. If we're not well, we can't work. So well-being, that, you know, is now really quite a bandied about word. When you think about it in depth, it absolutely has to underpin everything that we do, and well-being needs to be designed. That social infrastructure for wellness needs to be designed alongside the physical structures. So we go on to the next slide, please. So I'm now going to hand over to Stephen, who will be talking about the Broadmarsh in greater depth.
Thanks, Penny. So I'm just going to explain now how we arrived at the design of the master plan. As Penny just explained, the Broadmarsh is now a big concrete obstruction in the middle of Nottingham. It didn't always used to be like this. So before the Broadmarsh was built, I've got some historic photos. So in this corner here, in the north, by Middle Pavement, was Drury Hill, which was the oldest street in the city. Unfortunately, now lost to us, but it was quite a characteristic area that led from the top of Middle Pavement and went down onto Middle Hill, so it was quite a steep hill. There are the caves A lot of them were destroyed during the building of the Broadmarsh, but we still have some remaining, which is obviously the City of Caves attraction. The castle used to be visible from the road named Broadmarsh, and that's an element we want to bring back, but now Broadmarsh shopping centre is there, completely obstructing that. And there was also a connection via Friargate from the south to the north of the city, crossing through the Broadmarsh shopping centre. So our design was rooted in the heritage of Nottingham city centre, and there are some elements that we think that we can bring back and make the area more useful, more permeable. So the first thing we did was we wanted to reforge these connections that used to be there historically. So we want to bring back traffic through the site via Lister Gate, Grey Friar Gate, and along Carrington Street into the site and into the centre of Broadmarsh. So that would require creating a central focal point or node, a square in the centre. Bridlesmith Gate, as we know today, is a shopping street, and that can be extended into the Broadmarsh centre. So there are some historic links that we want to restore. Bridlesmith Gate connection would be similar to Drury Hill. We can try and bring back some of that character. And we want to create some new connections. So there's already a plan to pedestrianise, it's already under construction actually, pedestrianising Collins Street with some landscaping. And we also want to create a connection between the college and the Contemporary Gallery, National Justice Museum, bringing people from there into the heart of our development. So to achieve this, we would need to demolish some of the Broadmarsh, but there are parts that we can retain. So here in light green is the retained ground floor, first floor, second floor buildings. So there are some retained retail units here. The entrance here would be retained but renovated and refurbished, and Seven's House would be retained and retrofitted to improve its energy performance. So after they were demolished, we would want to construct some new buildings. So we put a new row of independent retail shops here coming in from Bridlesmith Gate via middle pavement, leading onto the level above, and two new Grade A offices opposite from the multi-storey car park, bus station and library that's currently under construction, so that commuters that come in and park at the car park can go straight to work at the office there, and that should hopefully attract some new business into the city centre. Where we've demolished the building here, that would create the new square, which would be bordered by and framed by a new residential co-working, co-living space with retail and workshops, exhibition space on the ground floor and living above. This building here, replacing the NCP car park, would be the Sustainability Academy, where young people can come and learn in our space and learn from the planted developments around. And we would also create a new co-housing residential development by the castle. So this is the current greenery around the site. You've got the castle grounds, the grounds around St. Nick's Church. The new college that's under construction has got some landscaping and around its grounds and on Sussex Street, banking up to Middle Hill. There's the gardens of the church as well, St. Mary's Church. And this little pocket here is the garden behind Paul Smith. And along this line runs a cliff. Below that is a really small hidden forest that's sandwiched between the cliff and the current Broadmarsh. So we would look to extend that forest, creating an urban forest in the centre, creating some allotments here which are high in demand in Nottingham. I think St Anne's allotment has a waiting list 1.5 years long. Residential development would have a green square in the centre. We'd create a new urban park behind this residential building and connecting to the church, so that's extending. And then on the levels above, we would have roof gardens, vertical gardens, green space. So this creates a green network going all the way from the castle through our site. There would also be, you know, street landscaping along the pedestrianised areas, and that would connect from east to west, the college to the castle, creating a green network. So within our master plan, we want to have a mix of uses and activities so that there's always some activity, something happening in the site which reduces crime, increases revenue and activity, and, you know, liveliness in the centre, which isn't there now, as it's just a shopping centre. So we would still have some retail, but it would be independent retail. So you'd be buying from local companies who would produce and sell their goods on site. We'd also have the grade A offices, of course, to bring in more money into the city centre, where people would then, workers coming in to the city centre would then spend that money at the sustainable retail and food, slow food cafes and restaurants. As the nature of work is now changing, there's more freelance working from home. We could also have some shared workspace, flexible workspaces, similar to Minor Oak in Sneinton Market, but on a bigger scale, which would allow independent businesses to grow. Community-led housing, which Kitty will explain more about later, her co-housing, allowing people to share living spaces. Urban nature would be spread all through the site, so it's not just one area, it's everywhere. It's something that can be incorporated into every element of our design. It's not just an add-on or some little area that's retained for growing. Sustainable food, all these green spaces would be productive, so it's not just a park that becomes empty at night. It produces food which is then sold, cooked on site. And that would also create green tourism and leisure, so people would come to see where this food is grown and made and sold. And that could also include the caves, so caves could be put to good use for brewing, growing mushrooms, etc. So this is our master plan as it stands. I'll just go quickly through these elements, and the rest of the team will speak about them in more depth later. So there'd be a renovated middle hill entrance leading from Bridal Smithgate into the independent local businesses across 3 levels. So you can come in from middle pavement, and that would lead you to the upper level, this sky garden, where you can peer down to the ground level below, because there is a cliff here which drops down about, I think it's 12 meters. So you peer down into the urban forest below, you get a nice view there. This space also acts as event space for the contemporary, and on that level that also leads to the urban gardens, vertical gardens, and the offices there. At the level below, so you could come in here and then you'd go down underneath this sky garden to where there's the Nottingham caves, also independent businesses, and that would also be the connection between Cliff Road and the rest of the Broadmarsh Centre. That road would run along the new Broadmarsh, so this is what used to be called Broadmarsh, reinstated again as a street, would have retail units and cafes, restaurants, all selling the food that's grown there locally. And that would lead you to the central space, which could have a market also selling food. It could be another event space, but different kinds of event spaces to, say, Market Square. So this could be focused on green activities. The co-housing building here, as I told you about, Collins Street pedestrianised, and we've reinstated that view to the castle, so there's no longer the NCP car park blocking the view, and that would be accentuated with design elements such as these leaf shapes and some water features. The gardens I spoke about before and the residential area. So retail and leisure, we want to create some ethical, planet-friendly retail, making use of the heritage on the site. So the caves could become breweries. People used to make leather in those caves. We could grow mushrooms, rhubarb. So putting them back to good use and making them profitable, as well as having them as a tourist attraction. If we want to create inspiring ways to improve the quality of life and well-being, and keeping the businesses independent and local, keeping the money in the city centre. So you see this photo here is from Hert's Yard during the Nottingham Independence Festival, and we could create a similar kind of street here that would resemble what Drury Hill, once was. And as I mentioned before, a central market that would have green events and that kind of thing. Leveraging local assets. This is a section, a 3D section, looking from the new Broadmarsh Street through on the ground level to Cliff Road, where the college is, creating that connection. And on the level above, you see this is Bridlesmith Gate on the left, cutting over the top through the independent business units I spoke about. So these could be cafes, places selling the produce grown on site, to the Sky Garden, which has the connection to the Contemporary Gallery and the event space here. Below, the new visitor centre and museum for the City of Caves, and the caves themselves that would produce food, beer, that kind of thing. So Nottingham has a history of entrepreneurs and scientific pioneers such as Jesse Boot, who led the development of the world in pharmaceuticals and also improved social housing in Nottingham. So we want to utilise our heritage and draw upon our expertise from Nottingham University, Nottingham BioCity, and our students and creative businesses, and give them a place in the city centre where they can make advancements and promote themselves and bring life into this dead area. So as I've been speaking about connections, Katerina's going to speak in broad terms about the larger connections across the site now.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, as we've seen so far, our Green Quarter aims to create strong connections between the city and the citizens, but we want these connections to be not only physical connections, but also visual, cultural, and virtual connections. First of all, with a pedestrian and cycle network, that also includes the reopening of ancient pathways. We want to create a 15 minutes community, which means that live, work and play activities will be within 15 minutes walk. And also it would be a virtual connection, because with the help of smart city and smart agriculture technology, we could be connected with the rest of the city and share what's going on in the Green Quarter, what food is available, what events are available. It is also connected to the existing retail circuit, but it would be a green retail. And also another important thing is that the site has strong potential because of its location, because it has the strong potential of becoming a green gateway to the city and an important urban landscape landmark because of its proximity to the bus station and to the train station. This will be the first thing that any visitor arriving to Nottingham will see. And we need it to be permeable and instead of having like a massive block of concrete. And the important thing is that the visitor will understand straight away where to go and what's happening and what are the most important element of the city center. So the castle will be visible, the Contemporary, the Nottingham Justice Museum, the Nottingham College. So the visitor would be able to walk through and understand exactly what's going on. And so that's why this would be also like a cultural connection, because at the moment, a visitor to Nottingham that doesn't know the place, doesn't know that the castle and the contemporary maybe are not so far apart like they seem. This is a picture of our vision of the square. The square wants to be a space around which all our activities gravitate, and it wants to be a display and a promotional space for what we do. So as Steve said before, our square doesn't want to be in contraposition with the old market square, but this square will be strictly dedicated to sustainable activities, to green markets, green festival, sustainable technologies fair, and it's going to be a place where we share what we do, and also it will reduce isolation and share our resources and increase cohesion and well-being of the community, especially because we want to see this as a live and work and play space. We need a gathering as central space, but what also we wanted to do is communicating what this space is through architectural and urban design elements. So the visitor that walks through Lister Gate will understand that here something different is happening through the pattern on the floor, that is not only a pattern, but this oak leaf will change in material and in shape, and can become a seat, can become a green space or a fountain, or it can have different functions that communicate to the visitor what's happening. So as we can see in this image, we can see the castle on the left, Collins Street will be on the back, and will be this like green promenade towards the college, and on the right Lister Gate. So we have the connection with the existing retail, and from this focal point the visitor will know where every element of our project is exactly is. So we can see, the visitor can see the forest garden, the office spaces, and all the main activities. So now handing over to Penny.
Thank you very much. Okay, so food and nature. So as we were saying earlier, nature's absolutely at the heart of what we need to be doing. It's the watchword, and the other presentations, beautiful presentations from people like the Wildlife Trust and the Green Party and Lib Dems in particular, really focused on nature. And of course, there was the 10,000 strong petition from local people that said that nature had to be at the heart of Broadmarsh. Protecting and supporting biodiversity is essential to our survival as a species. So as Stephen was saying, you know, we with the urban forest, we're proposing green walls and landscaping and allotments will all go towards supporting urban ecology. So let's talk about urban agriculture. Well, it's growing exponentially across the world, and if you think about New York, you've probably seen photographs of how the roof, you know, multi-story skyscrapers are now covered in food on the tops of it, and cities across the UK, particularly places like Brighton and Hove, are leading the way in showing how our urban centres can grow food. Around the city, we've got wonderful community gardens. We've got St Anne's allotments. These are all stunning places, but they're simply not growing enough food. So we've got to look at every single opportunity that we can to massively increase production. Now, around about 60% of people already live in urban centres, and by 2050, it's reckoned around 70% of populations will live in urban centres. So it means that in order to reduce food miles and reduce the burden on the environment of food, and let's just bear in mind that the global food system accounts for over 30% of emissions, it's something we absolutely have to address. And it's something that the City Council's taking very seriously through their carbon neutral 28 ambitions. But it means that if we're going to supply this demand, we've got to look really, really imaginatively at how we use our available space for growing. Now, urban agriculture sounds, you know, quite a new thing, but 300 years ago, Nottingham was famous as the garden city of England. Below St Mary's Church, it was all allotments. And in fact, in my downstairs loo, sharing here, I have a map that shows the city covered in gardens. So we've got all this amazing heritage to learn from. And, you know, it's about learning from that rich food heritage, improving it with what we know, and also looking to technologies such as airponics and aquaponics. Just to tell you a little bit about Nottingham Good Food Partnership, we're an independent coalition of community, business, academia, and also representatives from the City Council. And we're all working towards a more equitable and sustainable food landscape. And, you know, whilst sort of, you know, vertical farms and all that sort of thing might sound quite far off, we know that places like Lincoln and Derby are already investing in vertical farms. So we're just kind of following that new zeitgeist. And when we talk about using the land imaginatively, it's about thinking about the rooftops right down to the caves, from classic organic growing to hydroponics. And as Stephen said, using caves to grow mushrooms, which is incredibly exciting. I could talk about this all day, but let's go to the next slide. So sustainable design, you know, when we're considering building, we've got to go for the highest possible energy standards that we can. So there are sort of building methodologies such as passive house, which is designing a building in such a way that you're really reducing the heat load in the first place. We would obviously need to complement that with existing networks such as district heating. It's there, so we need to use it. To use renewable technologies such as photovoltaics and low carbon heat pumps, solar heating, to ensure that where you have a building, obviously there's huge amounts of energy that goes into the building in the first place, but it's got to be as economical as possible, if you like, in terms of the amount of energy we need to put into that space. It's also about, you know, looking at the materials that we use, using the greenest possible materials, and of course reusing buildings as far as possible. So on the right hand side, where the brown building is at number 3, that's Seven's house. So we'd be looking at adapting that, maybe have vertical farming in there. Where we see number 1, that's kind of a reiteration of the old marsh, you know, the old Broadmarsh, thinking about that. And number 2, we can see this beautiful new green urban forest area. Now, as we face climate change, we face increasing heat, and it's been proven that when we green buildings and we green cities, that we can reduce something called the heat island effect. That's absolutely critical, because then you don't need to engage so much mechanical cooling, which also, of course, has an environmental impact. The other thing we need to consider is we have the two ends of water. We either have drought or we have really, really serious heavy rainfall events. And by ensuring that we've got porosity across the site, that we've got greenness, we can help to balance all of that out. So let's go on to the next slide. So this is a beautiful view where we're looking up to the castle. We can see the trip to Jerusalem there, and we're kind of standing at the crossroads. I think it's of Maid Marian Way and Collins Street, and here we have an area where it's all about water. Whenever we have water, we attract wildlife, we attract people, and we would also want to, as far as possible, to use this area to be recycling water, to take grey water, recycle it, repurify it, and send it back to use. Biodiversity, as we said, is absolutely vital to this scheme. And so by introducing water in all sorts of imaginative ways, so in public spaces having waterfalls, but to ensure that water attracts and appeals to us. When we talk about waste, waste absolutely critical to aim for zero waste as far as we possibly can. Huge work has been done across the city. We've got refill stations for bottled water. We've got lots and lots of shops and restaurants who are happy to put food into people's own containers. And we need to create a culture in the Green Quarter where waste is absolutely minimised and where we make it easy to do so. So where we have organic waste, we need to provide means of composting that. I think by 2023, local authorities are going to have to deal with organic food waste. So if we can take the pressure off the City Council and deal with it on site, so much the better. It's also looking at how we can valorise food waste systems, such as coffee grounds, which can be used to grow mushrooms. So it's about really assessing at a very deep level how we build in the means in this development to treat water and waste sympathetically and with respect. So let's go on to the next slide. Lifelong learning. So here we are. Apparently I'm standing, I think, where am I about? Oh yes, right at the end where number 1 is, that's New College. So we're right at the other end. And what we've got there, so we've got the water in front of us that we were looking at in the previous diagram. And the green building that says, the building that we see as number 3 is our proposed building for the new Sustainability College. And as I mentioned earlier on, we need a place where people can learn green skills, whether it's construction, whether it's in urban agriculture, whether it's upskilling ourselves with cooking, can literally be from little kids, right up to older people, where people can actually learn to increase their personal resilience and thereby increase the resilience of our city. So I'm going to hand over to Kitty now, and yeah, look forward to what she has to say.
Hello. I'm not visible. Can anyone hear me yet? Hello there. Okay, so looking at the housing opportunities, there are many opportunities to offer different types of eco homes within this setup. And if you look at the left-hand side there, where the sustainable housing, the co-housing unit would be, that's actually a picture of Bedsted in Sutton, London. It's the UK's first large-scale eco-village. So imagine Nottingham could have its own urban eco-village, where people could have independent homes which are low-cost, sustainable and affordable. But the co-housing principles are much more than that. It's also where you can share resources, you can share tools and washing machines and cycles. You can have communal spaces inside where there's social eating and events going on. And then there's also outdoor gardens and allotments, so people can join together in growing their own food. So this principle of co-housing builds the community, it reduces isolation, and it's also self-supporting. In the middle, you can see there's another element of housing where it's more of a live-work concept. And that's where people can live near to where they work. Increasingly during COVID, people have been working from home, or they want to work closer to where they want to live closer to where they work. And that isn't going to stop, that's just going to increase. So here's an opportunity to have either your workspace in your home or you effectively live over the shop. Increasingly, young people are finding it difficult to get on the housing ladder. But for the self-employed, it's even harder to get a mortgage because they can't demonstrate to the mortgage companies what their income is going to be. So the co-housing funding models actually help people to buy in an affordable way so they can actually start to own their own homes. So this really demonstrates a new type of urban eco-village, which is for everybody. It's all ages, it's all cultures, and it's all types of tenures. Next slide, please. So looking at how business integrates into this, if this highlights the different aspects that we could have here. If you look on the right-hand side, that's a picture of a Grade A office in London. It's not like your typical, what you typically expect an office block to be like, a skyscraper. It's very, very different to that. This is actually Blackfriars Court, which is the first London office built with an urban roof forest. It's got 100 trees and 10,000 plants. So Nottingham is short of Grade A office space, and we could develop space offices which are like this. What could be better for a corporate with green credentials to locate here, which is at the heart of the city? It's the gateway to the city centre, and it's so close to all the transport links, the buses and the train stations. On the left, towards the left in the middle there, is again what we were looking at on the housing side, but this is where you've got live work. So effectively, this builds on the co-housing principles, where you've got independent businesses and spaces. They've got their own workshops, retail and office. But in addition to that, it's much more than that. They can share resources, they can share meeting spaces and office equipment. And this reduces space, it reduces the costs, and it creates a much more collaborative atmosphere. These spaces will also be quite flexible too. So the development on that, in that middle bit, is as Stephen described before. You'd have your retail and cafes at ground level, your workshops and offices above that, and then the living areas and the rooftop gardens at the top. So it's an attractive place for everyone to live. This view, which you've already seen a few times, I'll just explain where it's from. Imagine you're sitting on top of the new car park come library come bus station, and this is your view towards the castle at the end there on the left, looking down Collins Street. And the Broadmarsh is on the right-hand side, on the opposite side of Collins Street. So I'm sure a lot of people are asking, how on earth can we make this work financially? Well, it's founded on triple bottom line accounting principles. So it's people, planet and profit. And it's the way all future thinking companies are now operating. So people come first, need to understand what their needs are and what their desires are. But you do it in a way that helps the planet recover and regenerate. And you make sure it drives sustainable profit. It's not just one pot of money for a shopping centre or a huge office block or apartments, but this is a vibrant mix which provides much more opportunities. So you can see here, just next to each other, number one there is your Grade A office space, which is next door to 2, which is a vibrant retail area and cafes and restaurants. And then 3 is your roof gardens, which are not just producing food, but also providing tourism. You can bring people to come and have a look at what we're doing. And there's even more to this. It's also could make Nottingham a beacon for green technologies in the UK and attract new ways of sustaining the economy and bringing new businesses in. Next slide, please. So how can we make this happen? As has already been said, this is a vision. It's clearly not a fully costed proposal at this stage. However, we have looked at how we could make this work financially. And there are two elements to it. One is, how on earth do you get it built in the first place, and how do you get the funds to do that? And secondly, how does it generate income going forward? So in terms of getting it built, there's already money allocated to Broadmarsh from the Getting Building Fund, but there are also other funds that would be applicable, the Family Homes and the Affordable Homes funds. In addition to that, investment is changing. Ethical investment is the fastest growing investment in the UK. And you could set up social impact investment funds like the green bonds. You can also raise money through community shares. And then with businesses, and banks like Triodos are happy to provide mortgages. And this really works on the principles of the co-housing, because the co-housing community-led model commits people up front to where they want to live, and it reduces the risks and costs of what you're trying to do. So this is already a tried and tested method of raising funds to do the build. But this also applies to the business side of it. For the local independent businesses, we've already got a number of them lined up that want to be here. And I'm going to name check just a few of them, and I know some of them are here tonight. There's the Goodway and the Shop Zero, which are plastic-free shopping. There's Neighbourhood, which provides fresh food markets. These are all in place currently today. There's the Nottingham Vertical Farm and the Nottingham Forager that does local crafts. These are all businesses that have already signed up and would love to be in this place. So it's that principle enables you to buy in that upfront and get a commitment. So businesses drive the economy, and those independent businesses keep that money local. We can also get premium rents, and we can increase revenue from those coming in for ecotourism, and where you rejuvenate the high street by making it a much more attractive place to come and visit. This is not about a tired old way of just going into standard chain stores and buying more stuff. This is about coming in to experience a new way of living, and it's about work, rest and play.
Steve, could you just take us back to the last slide?
Yes, if we could go back, the slide before.
The funding slide, thank you.
Yes. So I was going through where the ongoing profit and income comes from, which is all of those elements that we've talked about, the local independence driving the local economy, the premium rents we can get from the Grade A office, the tourism that will come in. And you know, I think he said it very well. Last November, Mark Carney, who's the former Bank of England governor, said that to reach our net zero emissions goal, it requires a whole economy transition and the greatest commercial opportunity of our time. I think he says it all. So together, we, the Green Quarter, we can nail it. Thank you. Over to you, Jean.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So I think we're all going to get ready for some questions. And I know that Prakash and Liz have been gathering up questions, and I've been watching them as they've been coming into the chat room as well myself. I know that we've kept you kind of watching and listening for quite a long time, nearly an hour, I think. So thank you for listening so intently and patiently to the different aspects of this vision. As has been repeated several times, we're at very early stages. We got this together, in a couple of weeks, was it, Penny? So what we're asking for here is we wanted to share it with you and then ask for your questions, comments, feedback on what we've said. So could I perhaps hand over to Liz first of all? Have you found a first question for the
Yes, yes, I have. There've been a lot of chat and a lot of people saying how wonderful this is. So congratulations to the presenters from the people in the chat room. But there is an underlying question here that lots of people have asked, but three people in particular, Alan Simpson, Andrew Callow and Kath Sutherland. Kath Sutherland has talked about the Green and the Liberal Party proposal that's been put into the council, and you know, waiting like we are for a reply and a response. And so the Wildlife Trust has done the same thing. So Alan and Andrew are saying, you know, why can we not, all three of those proposals, not collaborate and move towards putting pressure, if you like, on the City Council to put these ideas to them, get our MPs involved, and go into a conversation and a debate about that. So this is a question really for, I don't know, who's it going to be? I think it will be
Penny.
Penny, yeah.
I'll give it a go. Yeah, very, very good point. Collaboration is absolutely essential to success, and the proposals that are put forward by the Wildlife Trust and the Green Party and Lib Dems collaboration were absolutely wonderful. And I think, you know, that the Green Quarter team have agreed previously, wouldn't it be amazing if all of these things can be interwoven? And I think there'd be great strength in that. We have got a big job to do when it comes to convincing the council that green is absolutely the way forward. And, you know, Alan, more than most in this room, Alan Simpson, who's, you know, economic advisor and all that, would be able to tell us in very deep detail as to why, you know, green economy and green focus is absolutely the way forward. There isn't really another way forward. So I think this is, you know, at the end of the meeting, when we've kind of gathered our thoughts, looked at the, you know, the consensus in the group, it will then be to think, well, how do we go to the next level? How do we take this forward? So I think it is absolutely about co-place creation. It's about people coming together to say, we like this idea. You know, it's been really interesting looking at the chat thing. Some great things are coming, you know, places to play for kids, more art involved. Absolutely. You know, that's the kind of stuff that brings this kind of dream to life. So yeah, completely agree. It's got to be about collaboration, draw all the best of the best out of all of the schemes. And very importantly, the voice of the people in Nottingham have to be heard. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity in an extraordinarily important part of Nottingham. Thank
you very much indeed. Thanks, Penny. Prakash, do you have a question?
Yes, I've got a question for Steve and Katerina. You'll need to put your, okay, this is about, are there any adaptations, do you think, that's required to plan as a result of the lessons learned from the current pandemic?
Are there any what, sorry?
Any lessons to be learnt?
Yeah, I think the main lesson to be learned is in supply chains. And as we know, at the start of the pandemic, there was a lack of food, there was a lack of toilet paper. Whereas if we're growing food on site and selling it directly, we're helping out with that problem. And again, with commuting, working from offices, flexible retail, we're also addressing that. So we're trying to address the future of working and living, shopping. I know everybody does buy things online, but people do like experiential retail. So people like to go to not just a shop, but to go to an experience. So to interact with things that they can't do online. People don't only like sitting at home ordering off Amazon, as easy as it is.
Another thing I would like to add in terms of lesson learned from the pandemic is the accessibility of more green spaces in the city centre. Yeah. Because currently, if we want to go out, the safest place could be an outdoor space, but living in the city centre and not be able to access any green spaces has actually affected the mental health. Like I can speak about it personally, because if I get out in the street, I don't have any easy access to any green space. So that could definitely help with mental health and well-being.
I think that's absolutely right. I think there are other things as well, aren't there? So the pandemic has kind of accelerated the change in working patterns, more of us working from home, and more of the larger companies now are saying, we don't really want these big HQs, headquarters, because we're not going to bring our workforces and employees all together at the same time. We want hubs, so we want hubs in places that are close to communities and close to our workforces. I think there's a huge amount of that in your designs that actually speak to the challenges that we've seen over the pandemic, which actually have been happening for some time. Has anybody else got anything to add on that? No? Okay. Shall I hand back to Liz? Have you got any other questions?
Yeah, yes. I can see that Alan is typing away on his chat room, and I can't access what he's been chatting about. So I just wonder if somebody could unmute Alan and ask him if you'd ask the question, or respond, if you like, to what Penny was saying about getting some help, getting everybody to get together. Pardon?
Alan, okay, I'm going to unmute him.
Yes, thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Yes, I was just pushing the case for the formation of a green umbrella that pulls all the different interested groups together, because I think the problem for the city is that it's actually besieged by proposals from developers to overbuild unsustainable developments for upfront cash. And that would be catastrophic for everyone involved, apart from those who pocket money short term. So to get past that, I just think we need a political coalition that sees us going in mob-handed with the greening principles consistent with the city's 2028 commitments, and holding them to the line of delivering against their own criteria. I mean, this lots of the stuff that has come out tonight has been brilliant, really inspiring. The question is whether we're going to get the chance to deliver any of it. And my worry is just running around chasing wonderful ideas and none of us being inside the ring.
I agree with you absolutely, Alan. It's about collaboration. And what I think is really interesting about the journey we've been on just over the last few weeks, it's all about collaboration. We just got together and sorted it out between us. And I think where there's a will, and I think there is a will with the other areas like the Wildlife Trust and the Green Party and Liberal Party, that there's a real desire to make this happen. And we're just overwhelmed with the number of people that are supporting us tonight, that there is an opportunity here for everyone to collaborate, to come up with a joint view so that we can, like you say, go mob-handed, because I agree with you, that's the way to make it happen.
Thank you, Kitty. Did anybody else want to respond to Alan? Alan, I think we're right. Well, we're behind you and in front of you.
Honestly, yeah, no, you're already there. That's
yeah,
great.
Absolutely. And I just think just to add to that, you know, for those of you out there who are watching and listening, and hopefully telling friends too, please lobby your MPs. Please talk to them, and if you can, and say, look, you know, we need a green space, and Broadmarsh is the space. I see Andrew is now typing away, I think, or is he? No, maybe not. Wanted to come in. Do you want to come in, Andrew? Andrew Callow? No. All right. Okay. So
can I just add, Liz? Can I just add,
sorry.
We shouldn't miss the fact that with COP26 taking place in Glasgow at the end of this year, the government is chasing round for things to put in the shop window in major cities all around the country, and we ought to play that card as much and as heavily as we can. If you want to show something that really puts us on a par with Paris and Milan, cities that are doing this on a scale, Nottingham needs to be seen as one of the pioneering green cities that paves the way for COP26.
Thank you.
Right.
An inspirational thought. We're going to get our heads around that one, and anyone else listening, please do the same. Prakash is next one to ask. I don't know, has Prakash got some more questions?
Yes, got quite a few here.
For it.
Give us another one.
Okay, there's one on the environment and saying what discussions are taking place with those delivering on the action. What skills do we need to integrate this particular resource and make it sustainable? Can you hear me?
Can you try and rephrase that a bit, Prakash? I wasn't very clear on that. And who do you think will answer that one?
It says, what discussions are taking place with those delivering on the action for skills to integrate sustainable resources and living?
Are we talking about education there?
Education, yes.
Okay, so we're on the kind of the Sustainability Academy and those thoughts, are we?
Yes, I think that Penny could maybe.
Yeah, well, the answer is that obviously we have got sort of construction training skills going on in various places, but they're not necessarily at the cutting edge. Construction jobs have got to be far more about cutting edge design. It's a very, very different approach. Building highly energy efficient buildings using breathable materials, timber frame techniques, than it is just kind of chucking up something made of concrete and brick. It's a very, very different proposition. And I think if we look to countries like Germany, where their construction apprenticeships are really long, it takes a long time to become a really, really skilled builder in Germany. And I think it's that kind of depth that we've got to be looking at, because we've got to move away from the typical appalling standard of build that we see by the mass produced house builders, where the quality is absolutely awful and you end up with endless snagging, and they're just not great places to live. I think we've also got to understand more about how the materials that we use inside buildings directly affect our health. We've got to have far more in-depth knowledge about how to grow food. As I said earlier, the vast majority of people who know how to grow food in the city are over 40. That's no good. We've got to have far more opportunities for really young kids to be able to learn and grow food. So we've got this amazing network of community spaces, and community gardens across the city, and a huge knowledge store there. But we need to get that knowledge out even further. So I think when we're kind of considering sustainability, we've got to look at it from a very, very different lens. This is about a lifelong path. This could be a 30-year journey before we're absolutely at the place where we can say, as a city, the citizens of Nottingham really, really know where it's at in terms of being resilient and being able to do stuff for ourselves, to grow food and cook and eat healthily, as well as build really good stuff. So this is not an overnight solution, and I think it would need heads of education, council, schools, local teachers, all of the rest of it to come together to talk about it. In fact, there is an upcoming Eventbrite in Nottingham where teachers are, I think it is kind of pretty much for teachers, to talk about how they can bring growing back into schools.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Penny. Liz, have you got any questions?
Yes, there's one from Alison and Anna Goodchild, and they want to know about diversity and whether or not that's something been thought about in the planning, and how are we going to represent that within the Green Quarter? Are we going to get cultural activities going, and are we going to get possibly Black and Asian retailers involved, getting more pop-ups and things of that nature, where we might you know, highlight diversity. And that, I don't know whether that's a question for, probably for Steve and Katerina, if they've got any ideas on that one.
I was wondering if it might be Kitty actually.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, okay.
Yeah.
Kitty,
I'm happy to ask that. I think, yes, actually the whole principles of co-housing are about a diverse community. And so it goes to the heart of what we're about anyway. But I actually think the whole landscape of having lots of independent businesses lends itself to being able to have lots of different diverse types of units in there. So it's not just boring old chain shops where it is very much targeted to a certain audience. This gives us an opportunity to have a very vibrant mix of really, really different types of businesses which attract people in. And if you think about it, the population in the city is one of the most diverse in the country anyway. So surely to goodness, we should be representing that right in the city centre. So wonderful opportunity to do that.
Hi, Prakash, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I think it's also about integrating this development and ensuring that BAME communities are involved in supporting the planning and development of it. Because often it's about tokenism otherwise, where you just say, oh, we'll do this and they can come in and do their whatever. So I think it's quite an important thing that when we're looking at this, we engage with all the communities and ensure that what the provision this Broadmarsh Centre could have, or Green Quarter could have, will actually incorporate true diversity.
Yes, and I guess that's the thing about also being community-led and co-creating, isn't it? It means that you're bringing people in right at the start to help you co-create. And I guess, Steve and Katerina, there is obviously things around the design which are accessible features, for instance, I'm thinking.
Yeah, Katerina spoke about it briefly in the Citizens Connected. Yeah, it's got to be as accessible as possible.
Thank you.
You see, there's no high rise or anything. You can walk straight into the upper level from middle pavement, or you can come down Collins Street.
We also designed, I mean, very, very generically, but raised beds within the allotments for disabled people. And we, obviously, these are details that we'll go after in the design, but we will reduce as much as possible the architectonical barriers.
And that is the thing about having people actually involved in the design, isn't it? It means you can...
as we said, we want to break not only the physical barrier, but also like the cultural barriers, that by creating connections with the museum and our education and college, then what it starts after the building of the project is a lot of activities that are made easy by the project itself. Easy to happen after.
I think the co-housing also helps with ethnic diversity, because we don't want to gentrify the area. We want to improve it, but keep it affordable for local citizens as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, very good point. Liz, Prakash, have you got another question for us?
Yeah, there was got Prakash. You go.
Okay, one of the ones that was for Steve and Katerina is about what is the proportion of space that is public in the
well, we haven't done many area measurements yet. We'll get back to you on that.
That's fine.
It's a lot though, isn't it? Because not just the ground space, it's also you get tourism in the caves, you can get public space to the roof gardens. So it's quite a lot will be public access or tours or something of that.
Yeah. I've got another question that leads on from that, really, and that's all about
Liz?
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
Penny just wanted to come in quickly on that.
Yeah, sorry.
Very, very quickly on fun things to do. There's got to be fun stuff. One of the things we were talking about was Las Vegas, weirdly, not very green, but there's this zip wire that takes you right down the Golden Strip. And we thought, God, it'd be really good fun to have a zip wire that takes you sort of from the top of Maid Marian Way and takes you all the way down Collins Street and weaves in between the building? What about like a fantastic urban ape course? You know, absolutely brilliant. We need to have, you know, we know how attractive, you know, fountains are for kids. Look at how kids access it in Sneinton Square and in the Market Square. You know, on sunny days, kids are always in there, and it costs nothing. So this then has to be about really accessible, fun play spaces. And you know, please bear in mind, everyone, this was put together so quickly. And when we go, you know, back into the design of this, you know, it's got to be about fun. It's got to be a place where kids say to their parents, "Oh, can we go down to the Green Quarter? You know, I really want to go on the this, that, and the other. You know, I really want to go and learn how to make bread. You know, we want full integration where, you know, families and people of all different ages, importantly, want to come because there's so much to do and to do together safely." So,
Thank you. That sounds amazing, doesn't it? Liz, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No.
We've got a few minutes left. So
not at all. It was just a comment made. Beeston Arts came in to say that there needs to be more recreational space, taking up what you're just saying, Penny. But the controversy here is and less office space. We don't need all that office space. That was the contention. So, Kitty, would you want to respond on that one?
Yes, well, in fact,
no office.
What we don't want is great big sort of skyscraper office blocks. Absolutely not. But we are very short of grade A office space, and this is a real opportunity to attract premium corporate companies in and create much more of a flagship in the city centre. So yes, we do it, but we do it in a way that is working with the environment, not against it. And I think this mixed use actually is the best way to go in terms of making sure you generate enough income. If this was just an open green space, it'd be very easy to do, but you wouldn't make any money from it. And we've got to be able to drive the economy in the city centre. It's really important to do that.
I think it's also about when we're considering design right at the outset. It's, you know, if you've got something that is labelled a green office block, it doesn't always have to be a green office block. You know, we've got to design in buildings which are inherently flexible because we don't know what the future is bringing. We might decide we need a cottage hospital, you know, better than an office space. It's really about having an opportunity to think differently and forward project. So let's try not to get too hung up about the labels that we're giving things. This is about creating flexibility because, you know, that's just far more efficient. It's like, you know, when we look at building a house, make it a house that's suitable literally from cradle to grave. It's got to be about flexibility because that's just the best way to build.
I completely agree, Penny, and I would add to that, which is, if you think about it, the Broadmarsh has only lasted 50 years.
Yes, yeah. We've only got a couple of
minutes.
Just one more that I think is quite an important one, and that's about energy. And is there a plan to include renewable energy capture within the development? I think that's for Penny.
Yeah, so it might be that person who asked the question came in a little bit later. When we were talking about sustainability, it absolutely has to be about creating an environment, whether it's indoor or outdoor, that absolutely maximizes efficiencies of natural resources. That means when you're building a building, it's got to have natural ventilation built in, or if it's mechanical ventilation, that it's powered by renewable resources. We've got to ensure that the energy we're using when we're looking at heat, that we're utilising the district heating because it's already there. And that's quite a permacultural approach, is really to make use of what we've already got. We could look at interesting things like using the caves for cooling. You know, there's all sorts of things we can consider. Rooftop PV, ultra low energy heating and cooling, as I've just mentioned. So this is about working with specialists. This is such a specialist area to look at not just individual buildings, but how does the whole entire complexity of the site work together, you know, whether that's energy, whether it's water treatment, whether it's how we deal with organic waste and non-organic waste. And, you know, we've got to be really focused on how we address the great nexus that faces humanity, our life support systems of food, energy and water, and to do that within a context that creates affordable, safe, healthy buildings to live, work and enjoy.
Thank you. That's a great point to actually finish. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry if we've not managed to cover your question or take on board any feedback in this part of the meeting. We are about to finish, but shortly after, or certainly by tomorrow morning, you will receive an email which will ask you for any more feedback, any more questions that you have and so on, and will also give you the link to the slides or the presentation so that you can have another look at what you've seen tonight. I do want to thank everybody for taking the time out to join us tonight. That's been absolutely amazing. So a big clap to everybody who came along. And I have got a couple of very special thank yous as well, as apart from the team, which is a very special thank you to all of the team, but also a couple of people who have been behind the scenes helping us make this happen. So a big thank you to Emma Torrance from Think, who has made it happen so smoothly, and also to Gary Morgan from Pixel Shrink, who's been dealing with phone calls of people who have had difficulty with logging in. So thank you to those unseen but real champions who helped us to make this happen. We are hoping that we've given you food for thought, green food for thought, and that you will join with us, you will respond to our email tomorrow, and that means that we can actually start the collaboration that we talked about tonight and Alan raised as well. It feels like this is just the beginning, and hopefully we're going to be able to move forward because it is the greatest opportunity of our time. Come on, let's nail it. The Green Quarter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.